I still remember the fluorescent lights flickering above me, humming like they knew a secret I didn't. The HR director, Mrs. Collins, sat across from me with a file in her hand. My file. "Madison," she said softly, "we've received a complaint. Fraud. Evidence points to you." My stomach dropped. "That's not possible," I whispered. I had spent 3 years building this company's trust. I designed the system that kept our finances clean. Now, they were saying I'd stolen from it? She slid a paper across the desk. My signature. Only it wasn't mine. "You forged my name," I said, my voice shaking. Across the room I saw him. Liam, my team lead, the man I'd helped get promoted. He wouldn't look at me. My throat tightened. "Tell them, Liam. You know I didn't do this." He stayed silent. Security walked in. The office went quiet as I was led past the people I thought were my friends. I caught my reflection in the glass door, eyes red, heart breaking. That was the moment they buried me, alive, in their lies. The next morning, my inbox was gone. My access revoked. My reputation shattered overnight. The company released a statement. "Employee terminated for internal fraud investigation." I couldn't breathe. My mom called, voice trembling. "Maddie, what's happening?" "The news says..." I hung up before she finished. I went to Liam's apartment that evening. He opened the door halfway, eyes darting. "You shouldn't be here," he said quickly. "Why?" I asked. "Because I know you set me up." He froze. That's when I noticed the perfume in the air. Sienna's perfume. My co-worker, my supposed friend. She stepped out from behind him, wearing his shirt. My heart cracked. "You two," I whispered. Liam looked away. Sienna smirked. "You were in the way, Maddie. That promotion was mine." Something inside me shattered that night. I walked away with tears streaming down my face. But as they fell, something else formed inside me. Resolve. They thought they'd buried me. But they just gave me a reason to dig deeper. For weeks I barely left my apartment. My savings ran dry. Job applications vanished after background checks. Nobody wanted to hire the girl who stole company money. Sometimes I'd stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m., replaying everything. The smirk on Sienna's face. The way Liam avoided my eyes. It burned. But one night, scrolling through old work files I'd backed up on my drive, I found something, a folder I didn't remember saving. Inside were screenshots, timestamps, and a copy of the transaction log. With admin credentials, Liam's credentials. My heart raced. They'd used his login, then changed timestamps to point to mine. A perfect setup. I should have gone to the police, but I knew how it worked. They'd see me as the desperate ex-employee, so instead I saved everything, backed it up in 5 places, and waited. If they wanted silence, I'd give it to them. The kind that hums before the storm. 2 months later, I got a call from a recruiter. A tech startup in Chicago needed a systems analyst. I almost said no. But when the interviewer mentioned they'd recently signed a contract with my old company, I froze. It was fate knocking. "I can start immediately," I said. The new job paid less, but I didn't care. It gave me access to networks, to data, to people who still worked with them. I kept my head down, worked hard, listened. Slowly, I learned their routines again, their blind spots. Liam was now a senior manager. Sienna ran the department, and both were basking in promotions earned on my ashes. I smiled to myself during lunch one day. "Enjoy it," I whispered under my breath. "Every empire forgets the cracks it's built on." And I was the crack, waiting to widen. By the 3rd month at my new job, I'd regained access to the system my old company shared for interfirm transactions. One evening, while everyone had gone home, I slipped in quietly through my secure terminal. I watched the numbers, traced the accounts. Liam and Sienna weren't just liars. They were thieves, still stealing, still using fake vendors. I recorded everything. Video proof, server trails, even their email threads. The same trick they used on me, I used on them. As I shut my laptop, I saw my reflection on the screen. My eyes didn't look broken anymore. They looked sharp, focused. But revenge isn't just about proof. It's about timing. And I wasn't ready yet. Not until they felt the same humiliation, the same breathless panic that they'd forced on me. That night, I drafted my plan. I called it Operation Breathe. I became invisible. Deliberately. At work, I was polite, efficient, forgettable. No one suspected the quiet new girl in IT was stalking her own ghosts. Every evening, I mapped patterns. Every night, I cross-checked transactions that led back to them. One afternoon, I found a wire transfer labeled Project Revive. The account number didn't match company records, but it matched a small consulting firm registered under Sienna's cousin's name. I smiled faintly. So you two never stopped. That night, I created an anonymous email address and sent one message to their company's ethics board. Check transaction number 87,543. Follow the vendor trail. Then I waited. Within days, whispers started. A quiet audit, hushed meetings, closed doors. Sienna's confident posts vanished from LinkedIn. I stayed quiet, pretending I didn't notice. But inside I could feel it. The ground shifting beneath them. They had buried me once. Now I was the ghost haunting their graveyard. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning. My old company suspended Sienna pending review. Liam was now handling her department alone. He must have been panicking. I saw his name pop up on a late-night company thread, begging compliance to pause the investigation. He didn't know I was watching. I couldn't resist. I replied anonymously to his post. You can't pause what's already in motion. A week later, a mutual friend texted me. Girl, are you seeing this? Liam's losing it. He says someone's after him. I smiled at my reflection. Not someone, I whispered. Consequences. But I wasn't satisfied. They'd cost me more than a job. They'd cost me my peace. I needed them to understand what it meant to be buried alive. To feel the world move on while you screamed under the dirt. And the only way to do that was to make them believe it was all their own doing. To break Liam, I needed to become his shadow. He still lived in that downtown apartment. Same parking spot, same gym, same Friday routine at a bar called Nolan's. I started showing up there, never close enough to talk, just enough to be seen. The first time he spotted me, his jaw clenched. Madison, he muttered. His friends turned, but when they looked again, I was gone. A week later, I sent him a message from an untraceable number. You should have looked deeper, Liam. He blocked it instantly, but I knew I'd planted the seed. He started looking over his shoulder, skipping shifts, snapping at co-workers. I didn't need to touch him. Fear would do the work for me. At night, I replayed his confusion in my mind. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to calm. But revenge, it never stays clean. And I was about to find out how deep the rot really went. I didn't expect what happened next. A message came to my personal email. No name, just, "You're not the only one he hurt. I have proof. Meet me." It was from a woman named Tara, a former intern from my old office. We met at a diner off 5th Street. She looked nervous, clutching a small USB drive. "He did it to me too," she whispered. "Falsified reports under my login. When I tried to tell HR, Sienna shut me out." My hands trembled as I took the drive. Inside were files, more fraudulent accounts, more names, a network. They'd been running this scheme for over a year, using different employees as scapegoats. I looked up at Tara. "Why tell me?" She met my eyes. "Because you're the only one who fought back." That night, I realized this wasn't just revenge anymore. It was exposure, and once truth gets air, it burns. I spent 3 nights building the file. Timelines, screenshots, voice memos, and Tara's drive merged into one explosive folder. I named it Project Resurrection. At exactly 2 a.m. on a Sunday, I uploaded it to a secure press inbox, tagged Anonymous Whistleblower. By Monday morning, every news outlet had it. Headlines screamed, "Corporate Fraud Scandal Exposed by Unknown Source." 2 senior managers suspended amid investigation. Sienna's photo flashed on TV. Liam's name trended on Twitter. I sat on my couch sipping cold coffee, watching them crumble. The same news anchors that once called me the fraudster were now calling me the victim of a cover-up. My phone buzzed all day. Old co-workers apologizing, begging to clear the air. I didn't respond because the story wasn't over. They'd buried me once. Now I was learning how to breathe, while they learned how it felt to choke. For 3 days, I barely slept. My story was everywhere, but the attention didn't bring peace. It brought noise. Reporters outside my building, anonymous calls, emails asking for interviews. Liam and Sienna had both gone silent, suspended pending investigation. I thought it was over. I thought justice had spoken. Then one night a note slid under my door. Just a single line. "You think you've won? Check your back." My breath caught. No signature, no number, just ink and threat. I checked the peephole. No one. Outside, rain hit the pavement in heavy sheets. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding. For the first time since this started, I wasn't sure who was hunting who. I closed my blinds, locked my doors, and whispered to myself, "You buried me once, remember? I already know how to survive underground." But in the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something bigger was still moving beneath the surface. And I wasn't done digging. 2 days later, someone knocked. 3 sharp raps. Confident. Familiar. When I opened the door, Liam stood there, drenched from the rain. His eyes were bloodshot, desperate. "Maddie, please. Let me explain." I almost laughed. "Explain how you ruined my life. Or how you got caught doing it again." He stepped closer, shaking. "You don't get it." Sienna wasn't acting alone. I froze. "What are you talking about?" "She made me do it," he said, voice breaking. "She has dirt on people higher up. Board members. They'll bury me if I talk." "You too," I stared at him. "You expect me to feel sorry for you?" "No," he whispered. "I just don't want to die for her mistakes." Before I could answer, headlights flashed outside. A car idling too long. Liam turned pale. "She's here," he muttered, and ran. By the time I looked out the window, he was gone, and the car taillights vanished into the rain. That night, I realized my story wasn't finished. It was just reaching the part where truth fights back. I didn't trust Liam's words, but I couldn't ignore them. I started digging again. This time into Sienna's connections. The deeper I went, the darker it got. Offshore accounts linked to her cousin's company, payments from anonymous investors. Some of those names matched the company's board of directors. She wasn't just greedy. She was protected. I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop painting my face blue. "You built your kingdom on lies," I whispered. "Let's see how long it stands when the light hits it." I sent anonymous packages to a financial watchdog group with the documents I found. Then, using an encrypted line, I tipped off a journalist who'd covered corporate corruption before. Within a week, a new story broke. Board-level bribery allegations surface, in ongoing fraud case. And just like that, Sienna's empire began to crack. But the thing about power, it doesn't die quietly. And she wasn't going down without pulling me with her. It started small. An email to my boss claiming I'd leaked confidential data. Then another to HR alleging harassment under my name. I knew it was her. She was framing me again. Same playbook, new stage. When my manager called me in, I already had the evidence ready. IP logs, timestamps, everything tracing back to a proxy linked to her cousin's server. I showed it calmly. This is her way of fighting back, I said, my voice steady but cold. They cleared me instantly, even apologized. But the fear lingered. That night I got a text from an unknown number. You're smarter this time. I'll give you that. But you still don't know who's really behind it. I stared at the message for a long time. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from anger, because now I understood Sienna wasn't the root. She was the cover. Someone else had been pulling the strings all along, and I was about to find out who. I drove to my old office building late at night, the parking lot empty except for one car, Mrs. Collins, the HR director. The same woman who'd fired me. She was sitting inside, talking to someone through her headset. I stayed low, recording through my windshield. Don't worry, she said, voice sharp. If this gets out, the board goes down. Not us. Sienna will take the fall. My chest tightened. US. So it was true. She'd been part of it all along. She and Sienna had framed employees to cover financial leaks from the board. Liam had just been another pawn. I waited until she left, then followed her home, recording her calls. Every word was more proof. By the time I got back to my apartment, I knew what had to happen next. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was a reckoning. They thought they'd buried me, but this time I was the one with the shovel. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I'd already outlined my plan. Every move had to be clean. No emotion, no mistakes. I needed the truth to speak louder than revenge. First, I reached out to Tara again. I found something bigger, I told her. I need your help, gathering proof. We met at her apartment, the walls lined with files she'd kept from her internship days. You were right, she said. Collins was protecting herself. There's a money trail. Overseas transfers under a fake training initiative. Together we compiled everything. Email threads, bank reports, call logs. Once this drops, Tara whispered, they won't just lose their jobs. They'll lose everything. I nodded. Good. Because that's exactly what they did to us. That night, I backed up the files and set a timed upload. It would go live automatically in 72 hours unless I stopped it. For the first time, the power felt real. They had the dirt, I had the oxygen, and I was finally learning how to breathe again. By day 2, the tension was electric. Liam called me out of nowhere, his voice ragged. Madison, whatever you're doing, stop. They're watching me, watching you. I leaned back in my chair. I warned you, Liam. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. He sighed heavily. You don't understand. Collins has friends. Government contracts. Auditors. She'll erase you before she lets you win. Then she should have erased her crimes first, I said quietly. He hesitated. You really think this ends with her? What do you mean? She answers to someone higher. The real money doesn't stop at the board. Before I could respond, he hung up. That night, my building's power went out. Total blackout. Then a single email arrived. No subject, no name, just an attachment titled STOP. I didn't open it. Instead, I unplugged everything and sat in the dark, heart pounding. For the first time, I felt fear again. Not of losing, but of what winning might cost. The next morning, Tara didn't show up for work. No calls, no messages. I drove to her place. The door was unlocked, lights still on. Her laptop sat open, Her files gone. A chill crawled up my spine. Then my phone buzzed. A private number. A man's voice said, "Stop digging, Madison." People disappear for less. "Who is this?" I demanded. He hung up. I backed away from the window, heart hammering. It hit me. This was bigger than corruption. This was organized, protected. I considered deleting everything, walking away, starting over. But then I remembered my first day getting escorted out of that office. My mother's voice, shaking through the phone, the humiliation, number. I wasn't stopping. I checked the countdown timer, 36 hours left. "If you want me buried," I whispered to the empty room, "then start digging." And I hit send. Forwarding copies of every file to 3 journalists and 1 government watchdog. Now there was no going back. By morning, the headlines hit harder than I imagined. Major corporate fraud ring exposed. HR director and board implicated. Whistleblower files reveal decade of embezzlement. News vans surrounded the company. The board resigned within hours. Collins was arrested. Sienna's assets were frozen. Liam vanished. I watched it unfold from my couch, trembling. Not with fear this time, but disbelief. It was over. The truth was finally louder than their lies. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number again. This time, a video. It showed Tara in a car, eyes wide, whispering, "They found out about the files. Don't trust." The feed cut off. My stomach dropped. The screen went black. I stared into my reflection, whispering, "What did you do, Maddie?" I wanted justice, but now it was war. And wars don't end cleanly. They end when the last person standing decides what peace is worth. I couldn't stay in my apartment. I packed a bag, left town, and drove west with no destination. Every radio station was talking about the scandal. Some even called me a hero. But all I felt was tired. Somewhere past the city limits, I stopped at a rest area and sat in silence. My phone buzzed again. An email from an unknown address. "You did well, Madison. We needed someone outside to trigger the fall. Consider your debt paid." I froze. Debt? I didn't owe anyone. But then another thought hit me. What if Tara hadn't disappeared? What if she'd been working with someone else all along? I scrolled down. Attached was a single photo. Me, walking into the diner where I first met her. The angle was wrong, like someone else had taken it. I looked around the parking lot, empty, quiet. That's when I realized maybe I hadn't started the storm. Maybe I'd just been chosen to carry it. And somewhere out there, the real puppeteer was still pulling strings. For 2 days, I drove aimlessly. Diners, motels, gas stations. I needed space to think. That email haunted me. We needed someone outside. Someone had been using me as a pawn from the start. But who? At a motel outside Kansas City, I opened my laptop and combed through the whistleblower files again. Deep inside one metadata folder, I noticed something strange. A set of logs added after my final upload. They were from Tara's drive, but the IP address traced back to Washington, D.C. That wasn't coincidence. That was strategy. I called the journalist I'd worked with. "Check your sources," I said. "Someone's rewriting the story." An hour later, he called back, whispering, "Maddie, the lead investigator on the case, she's Sienna's cousin. She's shifting the narrative to make it look like a single rogue employee blew the whistle for money." Me. I closed my eyes. My own revenge was being weaponized. They weren't just burying me this time. They were building a monument on top of my grave. I couldn't run anymore. I turned the car around and headed back to Chicago. The city lights glowed in the distance, like old wounds reopening. I went to the one place they'd never expect, my old office building. It was locked, but I still had a badge from my short contract with the partner company. It worked. Inside, the halls were dark, echoing with the hum of empty servers. My reflection flickered on the glass walls as I walked through the place that had once destroyed me. I found Liam's old office. Files still sat on the desk. Memos, security clearances, access keys. One folder caught my eye: internal communications, investigation reports. Inside were printed emails between Mrs. Collins, the board, and a name I didn't recognize: Rebecca Sloan. I searched the name. Rebecca Sloan, federal contractor, special investigations liaison. Tara's emergency contact. Everything inside me went cold. Tara wasn't a victim, she was the handler. I confronted her that night. I tracked the number she once used to call me and followed it to an address in Arlington. When she opened the door, her face didn't even register surprise. "I knew you'd come," she said softly. "You used me," I snapped. "You played both sides." She stepped back, motioning for me to enter. "You wanted revenge. I gave you the means. You fed me information," I said, trembling. "You risked everything. Why?" "Because the system needed cleansing," she said calmly. "We couldn't touch them directly. But a story like yours? That moves people. That forces doors open. So I was a weapon," I whispered. Tara looked almost sad. "No, Madison. You were the truth we couldn't manufacture." I stared at her. "What about Liam? Collins? The people you let burn?" "They chose their side," she said. "Just like you did." Before I could answer, she handed me a flash drive. "Everything you need to understand, but once you open it, there's no going back." Then she closed the door. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I still wanted to know. Back in my apartment, I sat staring at the drive. My laptop waited. A single click away from answers I might never recover from. I thought of everything I'd lost. My career, my peace. The version of me that used to believe justice was simple. I thought of Liam's guilt, Sienna's downfall, Colin's arrest. I plugged it in. Inside were files, photos, recordings. Proof that the corruption went beyond my company. It linked to defense contracts, government kickbacks, millions in laundered money. My case had been the distraction. The cover story they needed to clean house quietly. I sat there, numb. I could release it and bring the whole system down. Or I could destroy it and finally be free. My hands shook over the keyboard. Then I heard my mother's voice in my head. "Don't fight the dirt, Maddie. Grow through it." I closed the drive. Some wars don't end with fire. Some end when you walk away, still breathing. Months later, the city had moved on. The scandal faded, new names filled the news. My story became a cautionary tale, whispered in corporate halls, studied in ethics classes. I found a small job teaching computer literacy to underprivileged kids. It wasn't glamorous, but it was clean, real. One evening, as I packed up the classroom, a student looked at me and said, "Miss Madison, why do you always tell us to back up the truth?" I smiled faintly, because sometimes the truth is all that keeps us alive. Outside, the sky was turning gold, the wind soft against my face. For the first time in years, the air didn't taste like fear. It tasted like peace. I walked to the train station, headphones in, breathing deeply. The world still whispered my name sometimes, but it didn't control me anymore. "They buried me alive in lies," I murmured, but I learned how to breathe underground. And in that breath, quiet, steady, full, I knew I'd already won.